Begin today with a breakdown of that high-profile Taylor Schabusiness murder trial, which wrapped up yesterday evening. As we first alerted you back on Wednesday, a Brown County jury found Schabusiness guilty of murdering and dismembering and sexually assaulting Shad Thyrion in February of last year. Then last night, that same jury rejecting her plea of not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect. She will be back in court in September for sentencing. And we're joined now by our Brittany Schmidt, who's been covering this case and this trial throughout. And we really wanted to have you on during the 4:30 this week, but obviously with the timing of the proceedings across the street, that was not possible. So we get a chance to pick your brain now. So let's just start with the length of this trial. We've spent so many 4:30 programs talking with you about other motions and times in court. And yet when this trial started, it really went quickly.
It really did. I mean, if you think about it, we went through 30 plus witnesses that the state called, and this was a 2-phase trial. So we really went quick 4 days. It was scheduled for 5. But when you really get down to sitting in the courtroom, going through all the evidence, all the testimony, everything that police had when it got to the jury, it was rather clear what they likely would come out with. So in the first phase, where they determined if she's guilty of the crime, it took them only 30 minutes to come to that conclusion. In the second phase, where they had to decide whether she is legally responsible for her actions, they came back within 58 minutes saying, yeah, she is. She knew right from wrong. She is going to be held responsible for this crime.
Okay, so they did not buy the defense argument that she was not mentally aware of what she was doing at the time. And mental illness played a big role in the proceedings and in the testimony because she does have a past history of it. And yet, in the end, that was not the reason for what she did. So can you kind of explain how the the prosecution married those two things together?
Right. So a mental disease or a defect has to be something extremely substantial that impacts someone. So the defense argued that because of her past history of mental health issues, she has had previous stays at mental health facilities, she's had previous mental health diagnoses, but the state is arguing that none of that was occurring at the time of the crime because of what you saw after the fact. So the jury watched more than 70 minutes of video showing how she acted just hours after committing the crime. She was calm. She was able to talk to them. She was able to tell them kind of exactly what happened, where things were. They said if she was suffering from something at that moment, she would not have been able to do that. And so the jury saw firsthand what happened after, and that was enough for them to come to the conclusion that she knew right from wrong because she cleaned up. She was putting things away. She was leaving because she was paranoid that she heard footsteps upstairs. So they felt like she was in the right mind, that she knew what she was doing.
Drugs a big part of this, not just this case though, right? They play a role in all those previous diagnoses. Explain what the prosecution, how they made that their point with drugs and her mental illness.
Right, and so, I mean, Schabusiness already had told investigators before this crime had occurred that she was smoking meth with the victim. So under the state law, when it comes to an NGI plea, which is the insanity plea, not guilty by reason of mental or disease or defect, under state law, if someone voluntarily takes a substance, a drug, alcohol, or anything like that, and then goes on to potentially commit a crime, that is not reason of mental disease or defect. That does not qualify because you voluntarily took those things and then committed a crime. So that's what they really pointed the fact to, is that she admittedly told you she took these drugs and then went on to commit this crime, and then she cleaned up. So it shows that she knew right from wrong. That was their argument.
All right, so there will be more arguments, or at least testimony in this case, the sentencing hearing in just a little less than 2 months, September 26th. So based on what you've witnessed in this case and what you've covered in this case and trial, and knowing how the judge has reacted, how do you expect things to play out on September 26th?
I don't suspect to hear from Schabusiness herself. Usually during sentencing, the judge will say, okay, is there anything that you want to say? My observation in court, she was very quiet. She only talked to the judge when asked to talk to the judge, but she invoked her right to remain silent, so she did not say anything at all. But I do suspect to hear from the victim's family. They were there in court every day.
Okay.
The side of the pews were packed with family members, loved ones. They did testify as well under oath, but we respected their wishes to remain anonymous because they are victims in this case. So I suspect that we will hear statements from the family, and then the judge will lay down his sentencing. I mean, with the crimes that she's been convicted of, she's facing life in prison, right? First-degree intentional homicide conviction is life in prison.
Life sentence,
correct. But is there the possibility of parole? That's something that the judge will now decide. They are going to do a pre-sentencing investigation that will help him decide what that looks like in the future. Could she be out in 50 years? That we will know more about on September 26th.
All right, Brittany, thanks so much for all your hard work on this case and this trial. We'll talk to you on September 26th, I'm sure.
Sounds good.